There are three things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and Patricia thinking she owns the air molecules in my backyard. I stood on my front porch, the midday sun beating down on the asphalt of Whispering Pines, a neighborhood where nothing actually whispered because the residents were too busy screaming at each other over the height of their hedges, and stared at the mailbox. The little red flag wasn't up, but I knew what was inside. I could feel it. It was a disturbance in the force, a cold chill that had nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the beige Toyota Camry that had just rolled past my house at a creeping 2 miles per hour. Patricia, the HOA president, the woman who viewed the Geneva Convention as a suggestion and the community bylaws as the literal word of God. I took a deep breath, the kind you take before diving into freezing water or telling your wife you accidentally shrank her favorite sweater, and opened the mailbox. And there it was. Not a bill, not a flyer for a pizza place I'd never eat at, and certainly not a birthday card. It was a neon orange slip, certified mail. The universal color code for, "You screwed up, and we want a paper trail when we destroy you." I signed for it from the mailman, a guy named Dave, who gave me a look of genuine pity. Dave knew. Dave delivered these little orange bombs all over the neighborhood. He was like the Grim Reaper in shorts and knee-high socks. "Good luck, Jason," he muttered, handing me the heavy envelope. "Thanks, Dave. I think I'm going to need a lawyer or a priest." I walked back inside, the air conditioning hitting me like a physical wall, and tossed the envelope onto the kitchen island. It sat there, vibrating with malice. I poured myself a coffee, black, because I needed the bitterness to match my soul, and ripped it open. Notice of violation. Class A infraction. Date: July 14th. Location: rear exterior, 422 Maple Drive. Violation: unauthorized, unsightly, and hazardous structure. Swing set. Details. The structure in question exhibits severe corrosion, commonly referred to as rust, creating a biological hazard, tetanus risk, and negatively impacting the visual continuity of the neighborhood. The aesthetic degradation poses a threat to property values. Remediation. Immediate removal or total restoration within 48 hours. Fine: $250 per day, retroactive to initial observation date, July 7th. I stared at the paper. Then I stared at it again. Then I laughed, a dry, humorless sound that echoed off the granite countertops. "Rust," I said aloud to the empty room. "She thinks it has rust." I put the coffee down, grabbed the letter, and marched to the sliding glass door. I looked out into the backyard. There it was, the hazardous structure. It was a masterpiece of backyard engineering. 2 years ago, I had spent $3,000 on materials alone: premium pressure-treated cedar, heavy-duty commercial-grade brackets, and a slide that I'm pretty sure was rated for a small car. It wasn't some flimsy metal kit from a big box store that wobbled when a squirrel landed on it. This thing was built like a tank. I had cemented the posts 4 feet deep. I had sanded every inch of that wood by hand. My kids, Leo and Sophie, spent more time on that thing than they did in their beds. And Patricia thought it was rusty. I unlocked the door and stepped out. The heat was oppressive, the kind of humidity that makes your shirt stick to your back instantly. But I didn't care. I marched across the perfectly manicured lawn, which I mowed diagonally, just to annoy Patricia because the bylaws only specified neatly trimmed, and approached the swing set. I circled it like a shark. I checked the A-frame. solid cedar. No rust there, obviously, because wood doesn't rust. I checked the swing chains. They were coated in a thick, rubberized yellow plastic specifically designed to prevent pinched fingers, and, you guessed it, rust. I checked the slide, high-density polyethylene, plastic, also immune to oxidation. So what was she talking about? I got down on my hands and knees. I felt like a forensic investigator at a crime scene. I crawled around the base of the structure, looking for anything that could justify a retroactive fine of nearly $2,000. And then, I saw it. On the bottom bracket of the rear left post, down near the mulch, there was a spot. It was about the size of a dime. It was reddish-brown. I touched it. It was sticky. "It's sap," I whispered. "It's freaking pine sap." I looked up. Directly above the swing set was a massive pine tree. A drop of sap had fallen, landed on the black, powder-coated steel bracket, and dried into a reddish-amber color. From the street, through a pair of binoculars, which I knew for a fact Patricia kept on her dashboard, it might, maybe, if you were hallucinating, look like a spot of rust. "Unbelievable," I muttered, standing up and wiping the sap on my jeans. "She's fining me for tree juice." "Jason!" The voice came from the side yard. It was high-pitched, nasal, and carried the specific frequency of a dentist's drill hitting a nerve. I closed my eyes for a second, summoning every ounce of patience I possessed, and turned around. Patricia was standing on the sidewalk, peering over my 4-foot picket fence. She was wearing a visor that was 3 sizes too big and holding the leash of a cat that looked like a raw chicken cutlet. "Patricia," I said, walking toward the fence. "Good afternoon? Taking the creature for a walk?" "It's a sphinx, Jason. And don't change the subject," she snapped, adjusting her visor. "I see you got the letter." "I did," I said, holding up the orange slip. "I was just admiring the fiction section of the HOA library. Biological hazard? Really? It's a swing set, Patricia, not a leaking nuclear reactor." "It is an eyesore," she declared, pointing a manicured finger at my backyard. "I could see the corrosion from the street. It disrupts the Tuscan minimalist aesthetic we are trying to cultivate in Whispering Pines." "Tuscan minimalist?" I looked around. "Patricia, we live in Ohio. The only thing Tuscan about this neighborhood is the Olive Garden 3 miles down the road. And secondly, that's not rust." She crossed her arms, the leash tightening on the hairless cat, which hissed at a butterfly. "I know what I saw, Jason. Metal decay. It invites tetanus. It invites pests. It lowers property values. The board has voted. You have 48 hours to remove the hazard, or we will place a lien on your property for the accumulating fines." "It's sap," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It's pine sap, from the tree. I can wipe it off with some Goo Gone right now." "Don't insult my intelligence," she scoffed. "I've been in property management for 20 years. I know oxidation when I see it. That structure is compromised. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. If one of the neighborhood children were to sneak in here and cut themselves, the HOA could be liable." "My fence is locked," I pointed out. "And the only neighborhood child who tries to sneak in here is your nephew. And I've told him 6 times to stop climbing the fence." "This is not a negotiation," she said, pulling a clipboard out of a tote bag I hadn't noticed she was carrying. She made a check mark on a piece of paper. "Refusal to comply noted. The clock is ticking, Jason. $250 a day. And since you've been arguing, I'm going to double-check the setback requirements on your shed while I'm here." She smiled. It was a terrifying expression, all teeth and 0 warmth. "Have a blessed day." She turned and marched away, the raw chicken cat trotting behind her. I stood there, gripping the fence so hard a splinter drove itself into my thumb. I didn't feel the pain. All I felt was the white-hot rage of a man who pays $300 a month in dues just to be told he can't have a swing set for his children. I pulled my phone out and dialed. "Hey, honey," Sarah's voice came through the car speakers. She was on her way home from her shift at the hospital. "Everything okay? You sound tense." "Patricia," I said. It was the only word I needed to say. "Oh no. What did she do now? Did she measure the grass with a ruler again?" "Worse. She's fining us for the swing set. She wants it gone. Claims it's rusty and giving the neighborhood tetanus. It's sap, Sarah, a spot of sap the size of a bug." "So clean it?" Sarah suggested, ever the pragmatist. "It's not about the clean, Sarah. It's about the power. She refused to even look at it. She said she's putting a lien on the house. She's charging us retroactively. It's going to be $2,000 by Friday." There was a silence on the line. Sarah was the calm one. She was an ER nurse. She dealt with trauma and chaos for a living. I was the project manager who obsessively organized his spice rack. But even Sarah had her limits. We had built that swing set together. We had spent a weekend digging post holes, sweating, cursing, and drinking cheap beer while we bolted it together. It was the first big thing we did for the kids in this house. "She wants it gone?" Sarah asked, her voice dropping an octave. "Gone. Or totally restored, whatever that means. But she's decided it's hazardous waste." "Jason," Sarah said, and I could hear the turn signal clicking in the background. "I just did a 12-hour shift. I saved a guy who tried to pet a raccoon. I do not have the energy for Patricia. Do whatever you have to do. Just don't get arrested." "Define arrested," I said. "Jason." Okay, no handcuffs. But I have the green light?" "You have the green light," she said. "But be smart. Don't just get mad. Get even." I hung up the phone and looked back at the swing set. The sun was hitting the cedar, turning it a warm, golden honey color. It was beautiful. It was sturdy. It was barely 2 years old. If she wanted it gone, I would make it go away. But I wasn't going to take it to the dump. And I certainly wasn't going to let Patricia win. I needed an expert. I needed someone who looked at rust and laughed. I needed Big Mike. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the entry. Mike, contractor, destroyer of worlds. I hit call. "Yeah?" Mike answered on the first ring. It sounded like he was currently operating a jackhammer while eating a sandwich. "Mike, it's Jason from Maple Drive." "Jason, the swing set king. How's the fortress holding up? Kids still loving it?" "The kids love it. The HOA, not so much." "Patricia?" Mike asked. He knew the name. Everyone in the trades knew Patricia. She had banned 3 different landscaping companies from the neighborhood because their trucks were too dirty. "Patricia," I confirmed. "She says it's rusted, says it's a hazard. She wants it gone in 48 hours, or she's putting a lien on my house." The jackhammer noise in the background stopped. "Rusted? That thing is 90% cedar and the brackets are powder-coated steel. I installed those bolts myself. They're galvanized. You could sink that thing in the ocean for a year and it wouldn't rust." "I know, Mike. It's sap. But she won't listen. She wants a professional assessment or removal." "I can come by," Mike grunted. "I'm finishing up a patio job. I can be there in 20. I'll bring the truck." "Bring the big truck, Mike," I said, a plan starting to form in the back of my mind. "I think we might need to make a statement." 20 minutes later, the ground shook. You didn't just hear Big Mike's truck arriving, you felt it in your molars. It was a Ford F-450 dually, lifted so high you needed a grappling hook to get into the cab, painted a matte black that absorbed light. He pulled up to the curb, 2 wheels casually crushing a patch of Patricia's beloved community ornamental, grass, that encroached on the street. Mike hopped out. He was a mountain of a man, 6'5", wearing work boots that had seen more combat than most tanks, and a t-shirt that said, "I'm here because you broke it." He walked up the driveway, shaking his head. Show me the carnage. I led him to the backyard. Mike walked up to the swing set, squinted at the spot of sap, scratched it with his thumbnail, and tasted it. Pine, he said. Vintage. This week, probably. She says it's Class A corrosion, I said. Mike laughed, a sound like boulders tumbling down a hill. Class A corrosion? Jason, this set is in better condition than the Golden Gate Bridge. This is ridiculous. You want me to write a report? I'll write a report. I'll stamp it with my license number. Structural integrity, 110%. I thought about that, I said. But here's the thing, Mike. If I fight her on the rust, she'll find something else. She'll say it's too tall, or the wrong shade of brown, or that the slide reflects the sun into her cat's eyes. She wants it gone. I looked at the swing set, then back at Mike. You mentioned when we built this that the materials were overkill. Oh yeah, Mike nodded, patting one of the 6x6 posts. This isn't residential stuff. This is park grade. I got you the commercial brackets because you said you wanted it to last until your grandkids were born. This thing is worth… Shoot, with lumber prices now? Just the wood is gold. The whole setup? Labor and materials? You're looking at 4, maybe 5 grand in value sitting here. That number hit me. $5,000. 5 grand? I asked. Easy, Mike said. Actually, funny you ask. I was bidding a job for the city last week. Parks Department. They're trying to upgrade the playground at Centennial Park. You know, the one near the shelter? Their budget got slashed. They can't afford the new plastic crap they wanted. They're looking for natural playscapes. Wood. Heavy duty. Like this. The gears in my head, which had been grinding on pure rage for the last hour, suddenly clicked into a smooth, silent overdrive. Wait, I said, holding up a hand. The city needs playground equipment? Desperately, Mike said. Leslie down at the rec department was crying about it. Why? I looked at the swing set. Then I looked at the orange violation notice in my hand. Fine. $250. If I kept the swing set, I'd pay thousands in legal fees fighting the HOA. I'd have stress. I'd have Patricia lurking in my bushes. But if I donated it… I pulled out my phone and opened the calculator app. Mike, I said slowly, if I donate this to the city, that's a charitable contribution to a government entity for public use. Yeah? Mike looked confused. So? So, I smiled, and for the first time that day, it was a genuine smile. That's a tax deduction, based on the fair market value. Which is 5 grand, Mike said, catching on. And, I continued, the plan, expanding like a beautiful flower. If the city accepts it, they have to come pick it up, or I have to deliver it. And if I deliver it, I'm removing the violation. Patricia gets what she wants, Mike said, frowning. The swing set is gone. Oh, she gets the swing set gone, I agreed. But she also gets something else. She gets to watch me donate it. And she doesn't get a dime of her fine money. I looked at Mike. Can you remove this without damaging it? I mean, pull the whole thing out of the ground, concrete footings and all, and keep it intact? Mike cracked his knuckles. Jason, for enough beer and the look on Patricia's face, I can pull this thing out like I'm removing a loose tooth. I've got the crane on the flatbed. Don't do it yet, I said. I have to go visit the Parks Department. I need this to be official. I need paperwork. I need stamps. I need the kind of bureaucratic armor that makes Patricia's bylaws look like napkins. The next morning, I took a half-day off work. I put on my best concerned citizen suit, navy blue, crisp white shirt, no tie, and drove downtown to the Department of Parks and Recreation. The office smelled like floor wax and despair. I took a number and waited. When my number was called, I walked up to the glass partition. Behind it sat a woman who looked like she had been stamping forms since the Carter administration. "Help you?" she asked, without looking up. "Hi, I'm looking for Leslie. I have a donation proposal for the Centennial Park project." The woman paused. She looked up. "A donation?" "A substantial one," I said, sliding a photo of the swing set across the counter. "Custom cedar, commercial grade, safely maintained, appraised value." I glanced at the rough estimate Mike had scribbled for me. "Approximately $5,000. 5 minutes later, I was in a cubicle with Leslie. She was younger than the front desk lady, but looked twice as tired. Her desk was buried under budget spreadsheets. "You want to just give this to us?" Leslie asked, looking at the photo of my backyard. "What's the catch? Is it haunted?" "No ghosts," I assured her. "Just an HOA president who thinks cedar causes tetanus. I need to move it. I'd rather it go to kids who need it than a landfill." Leslie squinted at the photo. "This is really nice. We were looking at a catalog for something similar, and it was $12,000. We couldn't afford it." "It's yours," I said. "Free. I'll even handle the transport. My contractor is ready to move it. All I need is a letter of acceptance on city letterhead stating that you are accepting this donation for public use and an acknowledgement of its condition." "I can do that," Leslie said, reaching for her keyboard. "I can do that right now. When can you bring it?" "Saturday morning," I said. 8 a.m. sharp." "Saturday works," she said. She typed for a moment, the printer word, and she handed me a piece of paper with the city seal at the top. It was beautiful. It was a golden ticket. City Department of Parks and Recreation Donation Acceptance Form. Donor, Jason Miller. Item, commercial grade cedar playscape. Status, accepted for public use at Centennial Park. "One more thing," I said, tucking the paper into my jacket pocket. "Do you guys have an independent appraiser you use for insurance purposes? I need to make sure the value is documented for the IRS." "We use Frank at Citywide Appraisal," Leslie said. "He owes me a favor. I'll send him over this afternoon." By the time I got home, Frank had already been there. Sarah told me he walked around the swing set, whistled low, and wrote down a number. "What was the number?" I asked, loosening my tie. "He said replacement cost plus labor is closer to $6,000 with current lumber prices," Sarah grinned. "But he'll write it up conservatively at $4,800 to be safe." $4,800. I did the math in my head. I'm in the 24% tax bracket. A $4,800 deduction would save me roughly $1,150 in actual cash at tax time. The fine Patricia was threatening was $250. Even if I paid the contractor, I was coming out ahead. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the email I was about to send. I sat down at my computer. I opened the HOA portal. I found the violation ticket. I clicked Reply. To Patricia Vance, HOA President. From Jason Miller, Violation number 89901. Hazardous structure. Patricia, per your demand for the immediate removal of the structure located at 422 Maple Drive, I have arranged for professional extraction. The structure will be removed from the property this Saturday, July 18th at 8 a.m. Please ensure the street is clear of parked cars to allow for heavy machinery access. Regards, Jason. I hit send. The reply came 2 minutes later. She must have been sitting on the refresh button. Jason, the board acknowledges your compliance. However, be advised that the daily fines of $250 will continue to accrue until the structure is physically off the property. Additionally, any damage to the community curb, sidewalk, or verge caused by your machinery will be billed to you directly. We will be observing the removal. Patricia. We will be observing, I read aloud. Good. I want an audience. Saturday morning arrived with the subtle grace of a sledgehammer. The sky was clear, the birds were singing, and at 7:55 a.m., the rumble began. It started low, a vibration in the coffee cups on the kitchen table. Then it grew louder. Sarah and the kids were by the window. "Is that Mr. Mike?" Sophie asked. "That is Mr. Mike," I said, sipping my coffee. "And he brought friends." I walked out the front door just as the cavalcade turned onto Maple Drive. It wasn't just Mike's truck this time. It was Mike's truck, towing a massive flatbed trailer. Behind him was a second truck, a bucket loader, just in case. And behind that was a police cruiser. I had called the non-emergency line the night before. I told them I was moving a large load and expected a neighborhood dispute regarding traffic. Officer Miller, no relation, thankfully, was behind the wheel. He looked like he just wanted his shift to end. The convoy ground to a halt in front of my house. The air brakes hissed loudly. Startling Patricia, who was standing at the end of her driveway with her clipboard and her phone out, recording vertically. I walked down the driveway to meet her. "Good morning, Patricia," I shouted over the idling diesel engines. "This is excessive," she shrieked, pointing at the crane on Mike's truck. "You are blocking the flow of traffic. This is a violation of the street parking bylaws." "They aren't parked, Patricia," I yelled back, beaming. "They are actively loading. Commercial activity is permitted between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturdays. It is 8:01. Mike hopped out of the truck. He was wearing a high-vis vest and a hard hat. He looked official. He looked dangerous. He walked up to me, ignoring Patricia entirely. "Ready to roll, boss?" "Light it up, Mike." Mike signaled to his guy in the second truck. They began to deploy the stabilizers. Clank, whir, thud. The metal legs slammed into the asphalt. My driveway, not the street, so Patricia couldn't say a word. Patricia marched up to Officer Miller, who was stepping out of his cruiser with a travel mug. "Officer, you need to put a stop to this. This is a residential neighborhood, not a construction zone. Look at the noise decibels." Officer Miller took a sip of his coffee. "Ma'am, is he blocking your driveway?" "No, but is he blocking a fire hydrant?" "No, but look at the—" "Then he's fine. He's moving furniture. Big furniture." Miller looked at me and nodded. "Just make it quick, folks." "We'll be out of here in 20 minutes, officer," I promised. Patricia was vibrating. She was actually vibrating. "You can't just use a crane." "Watch me," I said. Mike maneuvered the crane arm. It extended over the roof of my house, reaching toward the backyard like a giant mechanical claw. We had prepped the swing set yesterday, loosening the earth around the concrete footings. Mike's guy in the backyard hooked up the straps. "Lifting!" Mike bellowed. The winch whined. The cables tightened. And then, slowly, majestically, the rusty swing set rose into the air. It cleared the roofline. It hovered against the blue sky, the cedar glowing in the sun. The rust spot was invisible from here. It just looked like a castle flying through the air. The neighbors had come out now. Bob from next door was drinking a beer. It was 8:05 a.m., respect. The Johnsons across the street were filming. "Careful!" Patricia screamed as the swing set rotated over the front lawn. "That is HOA airspace." "There is no such thing as HOA airspace, Patricia," I shouted back. The crane lowered the swing set onto the flatbed trailer with a gentle thud. It was perfect. Intact. Ready for its new home. Mike strapped it. Down. Secure! I turned to Patricia. She was scribbling furiously on her clipboard. You are going to be billed for the stress this has caused the community, she spat. And I'm still fining you for the last 4 days. That check better be in the Dropbox by Monday. Actually, I said, reaching into my back pocket. About that. I pulled out the envelope. Not the check. The other envelope. I'm not paying the fine, Patricia. Excuse me. Her eyes bulged. You have no choice. The bylaws state you can fine me for illicit structures, I said, stepping closer. But the bylaws also have a clause about charitable community engagement, don't they? Section 4, paragraph 2. Residents are encouraged to support local municipal improvements. I handed her a photocopy of the city acceptance letter. I didn't remove the swing set because it was rusty, I said, loud enough for Bob to hear. I removed it because I donated it to the city of Whispering Pines. It is now the property of the Parks Department. You were trying to block the transfer of municipal assets. That's a misdemeanor, Patricia. She looked at the letter. She looked at the city seal. She looked at Officer Miller, who was struggling to hide a grin. You donated it? To the orphans, I lied. Well, partially lied. Orphans go to parks, too. And the underprivileged children of the district, are you saying, Patricia, that you are against the children? No, she stammered. The narrative was slipping away from her. She couldn't be the hero who cleaned up the neighborhood anymore. Now she was the villain standing in the way of a playground. Great, I said. Mike, let's move out. Mike honked the air horn, a sound that made Patricia jump 3 inches in the air. And the convoy began to roll. I hopped into the passenger seat of Mike's truck. As we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. Patricia was standing alone on the curb, the letter dangling from her hand, her hairless cat wrapping itself around her ankles. Where to, boss? Mike asked, shifting gears. To the park, Mike, I said, watching my house disappear. To the park. The ride to Centennial Park was less of a commute and more of a victory parade. Sitting in the passenger seat of Big Mike's F-450, peering down at the roofs of sedans like a god looking upon ants, I felt a strange cocktail of adrenaline and exhaustion. The air horn blasted every time we passed a dog walker, which was juvenile, unnecessary, and absolutely fantastic. You know, Mike said, shifting gears with a sound that resembled a rock slide. She's going to come after you. People like Patricia don't just lose. They fester. She's probably at home right now measuring the decibels of your silence. Let her fester, I said, watching the city landscape roll by. She thinks she won. She thinks she bullied me into submission. She has no idea she just handed me a tax loophole big enough to drive this truck through. We pulled into Centennial Park 10 minutes later. Now, calling Centennial a park was generous. It was more of a depressed patch of grass where joy went to die. The existing playground equipment consisted of a metal slide that got hot enough to sear steak in the summer and a set of monkey bars that looked like they had been salvaged from a Soviet submarine. Leslie, the Parks Department rep, was waiting for us by the curb. She looked like she hadn't slept since 2018. When she saw the swing set strapped to the flatbed, her eyes widened. "That's it?" she yelled over the engine noise as Mike hissed the brakes. I hopped down. "That's the hazardous structure, Leslie. Be careful, it might give you tetanus just by looking at it." She walked up to the trailer and ran a hand along the cedar post. "This is beautiful. This is actually safe. Do you know we have a tire swing over there, held up by a chain that I'm 90% sure is just rust holding hands?" "Well, consider this an upgrade," I said. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in efficiency. Mike and his crew worked with the precision of a SWAT team. They dug new footings, poured quickset concrete, which Mike donated because he hated the government budget process, and leveled the structure. By 11 o'clock a.m., my backyard exiled swing set was standing proud in the center of the park. It looked better here than it ever did in my yard. It commanded the space. A mom with a stroller had stopped to watch. "Is that new?" she asked me. "Brand new," I said. "Well, new to you. It's a donation. Can my son play on it?" I looked at the freshly bolted slide. I looked at the rust spot that was clearly just sap. "Give the concrete an hour to set, and it's all yours." Leslie handed me a folder. "Here's the finalized receipt, the appraisal copy, and a thank you letter from the mayor's office. I expedited it. Honestly, you saved my butt. I had parents screaming for a new playscape for months." I took the folder. It felt heavy. It felt like ammunition. "Thank you, Leslie," I said. "You have no idea how much this helps." "No," she said, watching a kid run toward the swing set with wide eyes. "Thank you." I got a ride back home with Mike. When he dropped me off, my driveway felt empty. The backyard felt massive and barren without the swing set. The patch of dirt where it used to stand looked like a grave. But then I looked at the front porch. There was something taped to my door. I walked up, the dread settling back into my stomach. It was an envelope. HOA letterhead. I ripped it open, standing right there on the welcome mat. Invoice 492. To Jason Miller. From Whispering Pines. Board Item 1. Daily non-compliance. Fine. 4 days at $250 day, $1,000. Item 2. Administrative processing fee, $150 and well. Item 3. Community disturbance surcharge. Heavy machinery, noise violation, $500. Item 4. Visual blight assessment. Soil disturbance in rear yard, $200. Total due, $1,850 in dollars. Note: payment is due within 7 days. Failure to pay will result in a lien being placed on the property and revocation of pool privileges. I stared at the paper. Community disturbance surcharge. She was fining me for the truck that removed the thing she wanted removed. Sarah opened the door. She saw the look on my face. "How much?" she asked. $18.50, I said. She grabbed the paper from my hand, read it, and I saw her left eye twitch. Sarah is a gentle soul. She rescues spiders. But in that moment, she looked like she wanted to burn a village. "She fined us for the dirt?" Sarah whispered. "Visual blight assessment? It's dirt, Jason. It's under the grass." "It's okay," I said, a strange calmness washing over me. "It's really okay." "How is this okay? That's our vacation money." "No," I said, tapping the folder I had gotten from Leslie. "That's her trap. But this is the counter-nuke." "Who are you calling?" Sarah asked as I pulled out my phone. "Gary? Your accountant Gary? The one who wears suspenders unironically?" "The very same," I said. "I need to file an amended return, and I need to draft a letter. A very specific, very mathematical letter." Gary's office smelled like old paper and peppermint. Gary himself looked like a human calculator, thin, bespectacled, and possessing zero sense of humor. He was perfect. I sat across from him on Monday morning, the HOA invoice on one side of the desk and the city donation folder on the other. "So," Gary said, adjusting his glasses. "Let me get this straight. You were fined for a structure. You donated said structure to a 501c3 equivalent government entity. And you have a certified appraisal dated prior to the removal? Correct, I said. Gary looked at the appraisal. $4,800, plus, I see you have a receipt here from the contractor for charitable transport services? Mike wrote it off, I said. He charged me $1 for the invoice to make it a legal contract, but he listed the value of the service as a donation in kind. Clever, Gary murmured. He started typing on his keyboard. The sound was rhythmic, like gunfire. Okay, Jason, here's the reality. You are itemizing this year. Between your mortgage interest, property taxes, and this significant charitable contribution, you are lowering your taxable income substantially. He turned the monitor toward me. The deduction of $4,800, combined with the transport value, puts you in a position where your tax liability decreases by approximately $1,650 in hard cash refund. I looked at the number. $1,650. And the fine, I said, pointing to the HOA invoice, is $1,850. Technically, Gary said, if the fine is punitive, it's not deductible. However, he paused, a glint of evil appearing in his eyes. If the HOA is claiming they have a lien right on your property, and they are fining you for property improvement issues, we could argue that the community disturbance and visual blight fees are invalid if the underlying cause was a charitable act recognized by the city. But that's a legal argument. I'm a numbers guy. Stick to the numbers, Gary. I just need to know I'm winning. You're winning, Gary said. But you still have to pay the fine or fight it. The tax deduction is money in your pocket next April. The fine is money out of your pocket now. I'm not paying the fine, I said. Gary looked up. Then they will lien you. Not, I said, pulling out my ace in the hole, a document I had printed from the county clerk's website at 2 a.m. the night before. If the fine is based on a fraudulent claim. I slid the paper across. The HOA Covenants, Article 9, Section C, I recited. The board may not levy fines for conditions that are mandated or protected by city, state, or federal law. And Article 12. The board may not interfere with the lawful transfer of assets to public entities. Gary read it. He smiled. It was a terrifying sight. You're going to the board meeting tonight, aren't you? I am. Take a calculator, Gary said, and wear a tie. The Whispering Pines Community Center was a soulless room with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly jaundiced. It was packed. The monthly HOA meeting was usually a snooze fest attended by 3 people, but word had spread. The swing set incident was the talk of the cul-de-sacs. I walked in at 6:58 p.m. I was wearing my suit. I had a briefcase. I looked like I was there to buy the building or condemn it. Sarah sat in the back row, giving me a thumbs up. At the front of the room sat the board. 3 people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, and in the center, Patricia. She sat on a slightly higher chair than the others. She had a gavel. I didn't even know we owned a gavel. Order! She banged the gavel. Order in the hall! The murmuring died down. We have a full agenda tonight, Patricia announced, glaring at me over her reading glasses. We will be discussing the new mulch color standards, the issue of unauthorized bird feeders, and, she paused for dramatic effect, the enforcement of penalties for non-compliant structures. She looked directly at me. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. I see you decided to join us. Have you brought the check for the outstanding balance of $1,850? The room went silent. Heads turned. I stood up. I didn't walk to the podium. I just stood by my chair. No, Patricia, I said. I haven't brought a check. Then you are out of order, she snapped. Sit down. We will discuss liens in the executive session. Actually, I said, my voice projecting clearly, thank you, high school drama club, I believe I am entitled to a defense under Article 5 of the bylaws. Any resident accused of a violation has the right to present evidence of compliance. Patricia hesitated. She knew the bylaws better than the Bible, so she knew I was right. You have 3 minutes, she hissed. Make it quick. I walked to the front. I placed my briefcase on the table. I opened it and took out a stack of papers. Neighbors, I began, turning to the audience. I was fined for a swing set my children loved. Patricia claimed it was rusty. She claimed it was a biological hazard. I held up the photo of the rust spot. This is the rust, I said. It is pine sap. I had it tested. I have a lab report here from a geologist, my brother-in-law, but he's licensed, confirming it is organic plant matter, not ferrous oxide. There were a few chuckles in the room. Patricia banged the gavel. Relevance. You removed it, which is an admission of guilt. I removed it, I countered, under duress. But I did not destroy it. Because, as it turns out, the city of Whispering Pines did not agree with your assessment that it was trash. I held up the city acceptance letter. I donated the swing set to Centennial Park, I announced. The Parks Department inspected it. Their safety officer rated it A grade. They accepted it immediately to replace their actual broken equipment. So? Patricia scoffed. You still violated the visual code for 4 days, and you disrupted the peace with that crane. Here's where it gets interesting, I said, pulling out the spreadsheet Gary had prepared. I had blown it up to poster size. I unfolded it. You fined me $1,850, I said, pointing to the red number. You claimed I damaged the community, but by donating this asset, which was appraised at $4,800, I pointed to the green number, have secured a tax deduction that nets me approximately $1,650 in savings. I looked at Patricia. But more importantly, Patricia, are you aware of the Good Samaritan Protection Clause in our own HOA charter? She blinked. The what? Article 12, I said. No fine shall be levied against a homeowner for actions taken to assist the municipality or public welfare. By donating this swing set, I was assisting the municipality. The city accepted it as a public good. Therefore, the removal, and the machinery required for it, was an act of public service. I turned to the other board members. Bob, the treasurer, was looking at my spreadsheet with interest. Bob, I said, if Patricia persists in this fine, she is fining a resident for making a charitable donation to the city. If I take this to small claims court, which I will subpoena the parks director. I will have the mayor testify that the HOA is obstructing city improvements. Do you really want that press? HOA fines man for helping orphans? Bob went pale. No, we don't want that. Furthermore, I continued, dropping the hammer, Patricia's interference attempted to stop the transfer. She stood in front of the truck. That is technically tortious interference with a contract. If I pay this fine, I will sue the HOA for the legal fees, the harassment, and the stress, which I value at exactly $1,050. I let that hang in the air. So, I said, closing my briefcase, I propose a motion. The fines are dismissed. The administrative fee is waived. And we all agree that the swing set is now a city problem, not a Whispering Pines problem. I second the motion, shouted a guy in the back. It was Big Mike. I didn't even know he lived in the neighborhood. We have a motion and a second, Bob said quickly, ignoring Patricia's frantic glaring. All in favor of dismissing the fines against Mr. Miller? Every hand in the room went up, even the other 2 board members. Patricia sat there, her hand gripping the gavel so hard her knuckles were white. She looked at the room. She looked at me. She looked at the spreadsheet that proved I had turned her punishment into a profit. "Fine," she spat. "Motion carried. Next item." "Thank you," I said. I walked back to my seat. Sarah squeezed my hand. "You were amazing," she whispered. "Did you see her face?" "I saw it," I said. "I'm going to frame that memory." Part 7. Epilogue. The Sweetest Swing. Word count goal for this section, 1,500 words. The victory at the board meeting was sweet, but the real victory came 2 weeks later. I was driving past Centennial Park on my way home from work. It was a Tuesday evening, the sun just starting to dip below the horizon, casting those long, golden shadows that make suburbia look almost poetic. I glanced over at the playground. It was packed. There were kids everywhere. They were hanging off the monkey bars, chasing each other in the grass, and actually lining up, for the slide on my swing set. I pulled the car over. I couldn't help myself. I rolled down the window. I heard the sound of laughter. I heard the creak whoosh of the swings. And there, sitting on a bench near the edge of the park, was Patricia. She wasn't looking at the kids. She was looking at the swing set. She had her clipboard in her lap, but she wasn't writing anything. She just looked confused. Like she couldn't process a world where something she hated was bringing so much joy. I debated honking. I debated yelling, "Check for rust, Patricia." But I didn't. I just smiled, put the car in gear, and drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, the backyard was still empty. The grass was starting to grow back over the patch of dirt where the swing set used to be. It looked a little lonely. "Hey," Sarah said, coming out to the porch with 2 beers. "You okay?" "I'm good," I said, taking a bottle. "Actually, I'm better than good." "Yeah?" "Yeah." I looked at the empty space. I was thinking. "Oh no," Sarah laughed. "What are you thinking?" "Well," I said, pointing to the far corner of the yard, the one that was technically shielded from the street view by the neighbor's overgrown hedge. "Since we have that $1,650 tax refund coming, and since I technically don't have a structure back here anymore—" "Jason," Sarah warned, but she was smiling. "I'm just saying," I grinned. I read the bylaws again. There is absolutely no rule against a ground-level in-ground trampoline. It's not a structure. It's landscaping. Sarah shook her head, clinked her bottle against mine, and took a sip. "Big Mike digs holes, doesn't he?" she asked. "He sure does," I said. "He sure does." As the sun set over whispering pines, I took a drink of my beer. The swing set was gone. But the war? The war was just beginning. And this time, I had the high ground. Or, well, the in-ground. Patricia wasn't going to know what hit her. The end.